Hi, I've decided to make a Fragmapedium update, and since I have so many Fragmapediums, I've decided to break them into separate videos. So this first one's going to be on green and brown flowered Fragmapediums. So I'm going to start off with my oldest Fragmapedium in the bunch, and this kind of sad looking plant, which is always seems to be in recovery, is Fragmapedium Gargoyle, which is Lindleyanum times Boycerianum. And it was getting ready to bloom last year, and at the end of the season, for some unknown reason, there was like crown rot or something. So I'm sure it would have spiked since I actually rescued this plant from just a tiny little thing like this, and I was so proud it had grown this much, and then sort of like semi-crown rot, and it did nothing all winter, and just recently it's grown a growth from the center here, which is kind of odd, but it's not my only Fragmapedium doing this, and this growth, which is growing fairly well. This plant is in dire need of repotting, but I waited because I honestly thought this plant was going to die, but it didn't. But the flowers are quite lovely. I have bloomed this plant twice in the past. So, yeah. Fragmapedium Gargoyle. I'm gonna continue on with this recent acquisition. Whoops. I got this from Orchidea in I guess, sort of a plant exchange. And this is Fragmapedium Wasner Super Grande. And this is just a division that's starting off, but I know it's ugly, but I marked the leaves because at least it assures me that this plant is actually growing. So I marked the date and I know how much it's growing. So I think this was marked May 31st. So in about a week's time, it's grown this much. And the plant is going to be much bigger before it ever blooms, but that's okay. And it doesn't really matter that these leaves are blotched, because this growth is probably never going to be blooming anyways, and it's just there to provide support for this new growth here. So I think this is my only brown Fragmapedium. Could be brown, could be green. And Fragmapedium Wasner Super Grande is Warwithium, which I can't pronounce, times Longifolium. So I have one of the parents, Longifolium, which is here, which you've seen before in my other videos, and it is doing okay. Last year at this time, the growth in the back was starting to spike, and so this new one hasn't spiked yet. I've been giving it a bit lower light than last year because the leaves were very pale, so it's getting a little less light, but I think somehow it's set back the spike, but it's definitely blooming size. Longifolium is the basis for many plants. So but just to give you a comparison, I'll show you this other guy here. This is Fragmapedium Hartwigii, Forma Badenii, Barderii, yes, sorry. And I think these are supposed to be different forms of Longifolium, but whoops, I don't see how these two things are related, these two plants. I just don't understand how. Maybe they have a common ancestor, I have no idea. But yeah, this is a relatively recent acquisition. I got this last year, And it's been growing pretty well. I think I got it in August or something, and it's grown this new growth here. And the flowers will look a lot like longifolium, but it's a much smaller plant. So anyways, keep this in mind because this will be the parent of one other plant that I have. Let's see now. So almost last but not least is this one that is actually in spike. This is Fragmapedium elfins blotch, which is 50% Piercii, 25% Boisserianum, this guy over here, and 25% longifolium. So this is a first time bloomer for me, so I don't know specifically how the flower will look, but it can look like any of the contributing parents. So it can look like a longifolium or a Piercii, and since it's 50% Piercii, it could look similar to this, which is in fact Piercii, something you've seen before, and it's still in bloom. So yeah, I'm going to turn the plant around so you can have a better look at the flower. So yeah, so this is Fragmapedium Piercii, a plant that I acquired last year. It was purchased in spike, this one here, and since then it bloomed on another growth just a few months later, and I suspect that maybe this growth or this one over here is probably going to bloom later on in the year, so it should make for a good show. But before it blooms, it always seems to produce new growths, and these two were produced just before the spike came out. So and they're far away from the other growths, so this plant can travel quite a bit in the pot. So I highly recommend Piercii because I really haven't had a lot of problems with it, and I don't recommend too much fertilizer because you can burn the leaves, and this just started coming out when I gave them a little bit of calcium nitrate in the spring, because not this one, but a lot of the other Fragmapediums had very pale leaves, and the calcium nitrate seemed to have corrected that problem. So that's it. That's it for the green Fragmapediums, and I'll move on to the red and pink ones.